your program. We're going to let our folks into the Zoom call as well right now. Hey, everyone joining on Zoom. Welcome to the program. Happy week before Easter. Spring is kind of here. Speaking of jazz music, that's a fun song. Spring is here. Also, Joy Spring is a good one.
I don't know that
Clifford
one.
Brown. Clifford Brown, classic. Yeah, I don't know I'm sure somebody's written words. I don't know if it started with words, but it's a really beautiful melody on the Clifford Brown trumpet. All right. Yeah. So we got our folks in Zoom. We got our folks out there in the socials. And I'm going to intro the program. We're going to meet our guest for today. And we are going to have a good old New York time, as she is located in the heart of New York City. That'll be fun. We like to talk about that when people join the program. So welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. What we do here is we gather every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating, the most knowledgeable folks in the music and piano world. This might include a manufacturer, a rebuilder, a musician, a maker of some other instrument besides pianos. Of course, piano techs, our core audience. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and let's create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Master Classes, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour, just $16 a month. Hey, get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area. Join using the link bit.ly/joinptrh, bit.ly/joinptrh. We have a wonderful audio-only version of the program at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. That's a podcast, as they say these days. You can do the audio-only versions. You can listen while you're working out, doing the dishes, driving the car, however you do your thing, working in the workshop. And we've been popular all over the globe, reaching top 100, top 10, even #1 status in various locales in the performing arts category on iTunes. That's been fun. Also, you can check out our blog at Substack and our socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. Get on our email list at the website by just entering your name and your email. I would love to now introduce our esteemed guest for the day. Today, we are joined by Celia Berk. Now, she is an award-winning vocalist known for her intimate style, warm tone, and remarkable ability to bring new life to overlooked songs. Her work moves with intention and care, whether she's performing at iconic venues like, you may have heard of it, Carnegie Hall, or Jazz at Lincoln Center, or shaping recordings that highlight the nuance of great songwriting. With a deep connection to the Great American Songbook and a clear affinity for hidden gems, Celia's artistry feels both timeless and personal. Celia, welcome to Piano Tech
Oh
Radio.
my goodness, what an introduction. I have to remember some of those phrases. I'm going to grab them. Thank you.
I hope you'll appreciate this as a vocalist as well. I forget the gentleman's name, but he's in my network, and he's a singer, but he also does vocal coaching and I've met the audience will probably be like, oh, I've heard this before, but he does vocal coaching for folks like speakers and professionals and everything. And he had this wonderful thing that he shared, which I've been applying to our introductions ever since, and also just general conversation. And he said, most people do not use the full, like almost orchestral range of their voice when they're speaking, right? Like you can go very high, you can go very low, you can soft, you can go loud, you can pause. You can make something quick, all these different things. And he said, it's a really wonderful exercise to just think of your speaking like it's orchestral, and think, well, I want to add some variety. I want to change the pitch. I want to change the dynamics, right? And it always seems to tend to make things a little bit more fun like internally, I'm just doing it that way. But I think other people, his theory was, people really respond more, they listen more when your actual speaking has this type of variety and
Vocal
musicality.
dynamics. I think
Yeah.
that's great. I love that. I'm being driven personally crazy these days by the use of the word like. How many people talk and then they go like it's this and it's like that, and it's contagious. If somebody says it, the next person starts to use it. And I will sometimes try to help a person eliminate that from
Ooh.
their speaking because it makes me crazy. It's so distracting. And I will try to use a musical analogy, especially if I know that they know music. And I'll go, just think of it as a rest note or a silent note. I'm not telling you you can't use the word anymore. Just don't verbalize it. Just hold it like it's a rest and then go on to the rest of the sentence. So that's kind of a variation on what your acquaintance said, which is that inside our head we have this ability to think musically and use dynamics, and when do we talk quietly and how do we pull people in for intimacy, and when are you reaching out to kind of grab people. So I love that. That's a great image. I will remember that.
Good. And I don't know how good I am at getting rid of filler words. Some days I think I'm better than others, but it is a fact that silence, when you're able to incorporate it, or pauses, it's almost the exact opposite. When you're using the likes and the filler words, people are going to kind of, even some of the most prolific speakers out there, the people that are respected highly for in their field, maybe not for
Mm.
speaking, you'll hear them use this stuff. But being able to just take a pause in your speech can really bring people in.
Yeah.
And this other stuff can be distracting, or you can lose esteem. The guy's name, I remembered it, and it's worth sharing. His name is Roger Love.
How
And
can you forget that?
I
Love?
Yeah, I just know so many different folks, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm looking at his site here. The
Great
secret voice
name.
frequency that changed the lives of Bradley Cooper, Tony Robbins, and thousands more. Yeah, he's a fascinating guy. Fascinating guy.
Mm.
But I thought that was a just great
I
input
and
and feedback.
I completely agree with you. The power of silence, creating space and letting the listener fill it with a thought, to trust that silence, it can be incredibly powerful.
Or even fill it with the silence. I feel like these days people get so little silence. We're
Yes.
bombarded with noise and distractions and all of these things, and to have a minute just in the day-to-day life where somebody is giving you some silence is
It's
part of
very
just the natural flow.
it's very hard to mentally rest these days. And I did an interview like this, and I was being interviewed with a songwriter who I was doing an evening of her music, and the host said, "What do you both listen to?" And we both simultaneously said, "Nothing." We have so much music in our head and so much thinking going on in our heads that the last thing we want is any more sound. We just want silence, just some quiet.
I agree with you. Yeah, that was me. That was me for many years, actually, especially when I was studying music and I was in university and it was just all day long. I was practicing piano. Of course, there was time listening to music, especially for the sake of study. But I did find myself being attracted to silence and also not being interested in going out to shows even, right? Just because it was a part of my life. Lately, I've been, maybe it's because I'm not performing and practicing as much, been more drawn to just listening to music and just putting on a playlist or building a playlist or trying to go out and see some music. Especially I want to go back out in New York City next time I'm there. Just go to like the Blue Note or Smalls or
Mhm.
um Are you familiar with this? Actually, you're in New York. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's called Saint Maisie.
No.
It's been a while since I've been there, but I'm remembering it being very cool. We actually tuned their piano there. They need an upgrade on their piano. It's it's quite abused, but they have a really fun vibe there. It's kind of got a little bit of a speakeasy vibe, and they'll have the guys playing like the Django Reinhardt type of, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
guitar, like the
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
like a ragtime type of vibe mixed with the early jazz, and then they have people come and do like swing dancing and stuff. It's a cool place. I was gonna go there last time I was visiting and just didn't get a chance to.
Is it in Manhattan?
It's in Brooklyn.
In Brook,
I know
that
you're in
I was
Manhattan,
going
and
to
it's
say,
hard for those
I can't
Manhattaners
believe
to
it's
get
in
outside.
Manhattan, and I never heard. Brooklyn has so many rooms of different shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
So if you come back, I'll go with you because I'm
All
always
right.
going, what is that? Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, what about like Smalls and Mesro? Those are in
Yes.
Manhattan, right?
Yes,
Those are in Manhattan? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you go to those places?
Um, some. I'm not a
Okay.
pure jazz
Right.
singer. I would say that I bridge it,
Hmm.
and I would never claim to be a pure play jazz singer.
Sure.
But I so admire how present they are as musicians, how flexible they are as musicians. It's not so easy for me as a trained singer who's used to singing basically what's on the page,
Mm.
um, and just to be around them. And I frequently surround myself with musicians on recordings who are from that end of the spectrum, which is great for me.
Mm.
And it really gives me permission to move towards them musically. And the EPs that I put out this year, each one for last year, one for each season. The fourth one actually has a Django Reinhardt jazz
Mm.
vibe to it. It's all the winter season. Has a great jazz fiddler player and bass player and guitar. It's
Ooh.
just great. Yeah.
Ooh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that jazz fiddle is
Yeah.
underexposed.
Yes.
Um, okay, so I told you I have like a basic cup question that I started with up front. I kind of skipped it. We can go back to it
Sure.
on the other questions based on our conversation. But yeah, just tell us just a little bit of background, and I'll go back to your early days of music. How did you first get exposed, and how did this reveal itself as such a major pathway in your life?
Yeah, I found it fascinating. I still don't know how you guys found me, but I do. My most valuable, literally, my most highly insured possession is my
Mm,
1924
mm,
Steinway Baby Grand, which was my grandmother's. And she was a wonderful concert pianist. And her sister was an opera singer, and a mezzo, and I'm a mezzo. So I feel like it's that part of my genes where the music comes from, and she wanted me very, very much to be a piano player. I wasn't, but I remember distinctly as a child that she told me that when I was old enough, she would ship her piano to me. She lived upstate New York, and I was on Long Island. And the way that she was going to know that I was old enough for the piano is she would talk about having piano hands, and she would make me put my hands out and go like that. And until she saw an octave reach, she wasn't going to ship the piano. And I remember the day that she said, "Now you have piano hands," and the piano came down. And unfortunately, I never showed a real affinity for the piano, although I loved that instrument and I loved watching her play. I found it fascinating because she was a very contained, proper lady. But when she sat down at the piano, what happened to her and what happened to her hands and how lightly they went across the keyboard, and I hope that I do something like that sometime vocally, but I could never
mm.
do it with these.
Mm.
But she most definitely instilled the love of music in me. And from high school on, I was taking voice lessons with professional voice teachers in New York. One of my parents' friends would give me their Long Island Railroad commuter pass, monthly pass, and I would use it to go in and out every Saturday. And the conductor would look at me like, this isn't your monthly commuter pass. You're like 12 years old. This can't possibly be. But they always, no pun intended, gave me a pass. And I would go in and I would have voice lessons. And I then got a degree, a BFA in theater. Came into the city formally and realized I wasn't a starving artist. It wasn't the way that I hadn't like figured out that part of it. And so I told myself that I quit everything. And I went off and had a corporate career. And then about a little more than 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to go back to performing and I wanted to sing. And I told my voice teacher that I wanted to sing. And that was the moment when I realized that I was still singing. That even though I had told myself that I was quitting everything, I was still taking a voice lesson every week. I had a corporate career. I was a manager, director, vice president, senior vice president, executive vice president. People could see in my briefcase music sticking out. Everybody knew that I sang, but they never heard me. And I went, oh my God, I've been singing all this time and I didn't notice, because to me, it wasn't a conscious decision. It's kind of like breathing. And if there ever comes a point in my life where I cannot sing, I think I'm done. I can't imagine a life that doesn't include my ability to make music, whether it's for myself or to share with other people. So at that point, my voice teacher, who'd been trying so hard to get me to sing, do something with it, was so thrilled. The door that was open to me was cabaret, because you can go through it. Nobody can stop you. If you can organize it and fund it, you can do it. And I started to sing and I started to win awards. I won several debut awards. I called myself the world's oldest debutante. And I started to record. And when I got into the recording studio, that I realized where I was headed all along. It's really my happy place. And then to be able to find what I call hidden gems by great songwriters, and to have the ability to be in New York City and tap extraordinary musicians, and all I want to be is one of the musicians in one way or another. And so when they signal to me that they feel that I belong, I'm in my happy place. But I could never have predicted that I would come in some way full circle, but I never started out to be a singer. It just was sort of embedded in me, and it was always there. And it was sort of, the gods were waiting for me to like realize that that's who I was, that I'm a singer.
Well, it's a beautiful story. Yeah, I feel like one of the things, I'm a creative person. I also am various professions, varying degrees of creativity and
Yeah.
business and things like that. And I would say, I don't know if you resonate with this, but I keep running into this, or I feel like it's part of my, mission, whether I like it or not, is I think generally, not just you and I think people need and crave more of a couple of things in their lives. One of them would be just personal creative expression, being able to like do things that are creative, or somehow artistic. If maybe you're not generative, but you're playing some music or something. And also get out and participate in live things,
Yes.
like go out and see live music or dancing or
And
whatever.
theater. I go to the theater all the time. And tomorrow I'm off to the Metropolitan Opera for 5 hours of Tristan and Isolde. You're in the heart of New York City. I
Hmm.
completely agree. It's what says we're alive. We're alive.
And the thing that I noticed though is it's very hard to know that you need that. And it's very easy to say no to it, and say, "Oh, I'm feeling, I'm feeling bored, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling this or that." And the answers these days are so much at your fingertips, but they're not exactly the right answer. Oh, you're bored? Turn on Netflix, you don't have to
Yeah.
go outside. Why would you need to go, but turn on the Netflix, I'm feeling one of the things I thought of was the vocalization and how much it feeds you. There's if you study the human body and brain and all of our various systems, the nervous system, you've got the vagus nerve,
Yes.
and it's so essential to they call it the sort of rest and digest system, your digestive system health, your emotional health, your ability to self-regulate between kind of a fight or flight state and a kind of a rest and digest state. There is strong evidence that singing and vocalization helps regulate that system, but people are not doing that, and those systems are dysregulated, and they're going to the doctor. And I'm not going to try to have all the pretend to have all the answers, but oh, you give me an antidepressant,
Yeah.
well, maybe you
But
could take some singing lessons, and it might do
singing
something similar.
singing releases endorphins too, and
Absolutely.
in the middle of my corporate career, and especially during the COVID and coming out of the pandemic, when I continued to do work from home in this kind of setting, I would sit here for 8 hours at a time. And at the end, I would go, all right, and now I'm going off to release endorphins. And I would
Mm,
go and sing and
hmm
vocalize. And
hmm
I'm carrying it around in me. Nobody, fortunately for me, I don't mind because my piano playing is so bad. This is my instrument. So I can go wherever I want
mm,
and do whatever I want. And in terms of live performance, to your point, there's something there's something very moving about the idea that there will never again be this particular set of circumstances. You may be seeing the same performance, the same set list, or the same play, or whatever, or concert as the person a couple of weeks later or a couple of days later, but there will never be the same people in the audience again. So
mm,
it's one thing that just can never be replicated. You
hmm
really are living in the moment and you are completing the circle with the performers. And I find that very moving to just
mm.
think who is in this room with me because we'll never be in the room together in this configuration.
Let's listen to some of your music, and maybe we'll go to this video that you shared
If
at
the
54
video
below.
cooperates, yes, this is 54 below, and it is most
Okay.
definitely a hidden gem. And I picked one that's just piano, just in honor of your show.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Let's share that. I think it'll cooperate just fine. Let's see here. Go full screen and hit play. Let me know if there's any issues.
I searched for love like someone stumbling in the dark. I came so close, and yet I always missed the mark. My phantom love would always run away and hide, but how I tried. Oh, how I tried. The one night stands, the love I never used to feel, the broken hearts of men to whom the love was real, the pang of guilt, the bitter flavor of regret, until we met, until we met. But now that I have everything, now I know my everything is you, for you have turned my loneliness to happiness. Now what I have at last is everything. I used to gaze into the mirror of my mind, and what I saw was neither flattering nor kind. My sense of me was very gray and rather small. I didn't like myself at all. But when we kissed, when first I looked into your eyes, I saw me there, someone to look to and to prize. What you reflect has brought new meaning in my life. How I have grown since you're my own. For now that I have everything, now I know my everything is you, for you have turned my loneliness to happiness. Now what I have at last is everything. My everything is you.
Great. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
It's
So that's a good example of a hidden gem. The songwriter is Irvin Drake, and he wrote I Believe, and he wrote It Was a Very Good Year, which was a big standard for Sinatra. But
sure.
this one was Hiding. It was recorded by Margaret Whiting, who was one of the great girl singers of the 40s and 50s, and I became friends with her daughter. And she called me one day and said, I've been listening to Mother on the radio and I can hear you sing this song. And she sent me this song. And I went, oh my God, that's a great song. So it's the title of my third album, actually.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a few I don't know the song from memory. Maybe I've heard it once or twice before. But I got I did keep things it's interesting you mentioned Sinatra because I kept getting like of a Sinatra type of vibe, you know?
Yeah.
And the song I kept thinking of was Moonlight in Vermont.
Well,
Plus,
that was Margaret Whiting's great hit. So you just did a
okay.
mind meld straight to her. If you look up Margaret
Okay.
Whiting, Moonlight in Vermont, that was
Okay.
her biggest hit. So
All right,
nicely
interesting.
done. Yeah,
I know the Sinatra version. I don't know if I've heard her version even,
yeah.
but
I think
But
she may
yeah,
have introduced it. I'm not sure. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so yeah, you do a great job of kind of um delivering a little bit of like classic crooner type of styling, and it very feels very authentic, like you're kind of jumping out of I went to uh I've only been to Montauk. You've probably been to Montauk a few times, but have you been to Montauk?
Just a few times,
As
not
a few
not
times.
frequently. Yeah.
I went there once, and the only time I went there was just kind of like on an impromptu trip. I was living in Brooklyn, and I just wanted a little quick getaway. And I said, I'll go to Montauk. That's supposed to be an interesting place. I took the train there, but it was in the middle of the winter, and Montauk is dead. Absolutely, everything
Actually,
closed.
that's when I was there too. It was great. It was empty. Yeah.
It was empty. Yeah, there was something nice about it. It was very calm, and like you could go to the water and just like and enjoy the view by yourself or whatever. And I stayed at this Montauk hotel, which um it all the big jazz, guys and gals that were of that era of the kind of crooners, you could kind of just feel that vibe. They'd all been through there. They had done the shows in the summertime and people had gone to. Um so yeah, that it's a very I don't know, it's just a great American kind of classic
Yeah.
jazzy
Yeah.
vibe. Good times. Um, Wonderful. Well, one thing I was also thinking of while I was listening to that, and you're talking about taking vocal lessons for so long, like weekly. What what are the lessons like over the course of that many years? I mean, did you keep the single teacher? Do you work with multiple people? Is it exercises? Are you working on different pieces? Like, what does voice lessons look like over that many years?
I had several teachers up until the one that I had for the longest period of time. The first one I had, actually, I think she'd been in like the Ziegfeld Follies. I was thinking about her recently, and she was in this tiny little room inside Carnegie Hall, but she had no money. So
Mm,
she must have been this great beauty,
hmm
and now all she had was this tiny little room,
mm,
and she didn't know how to teach me how to sing. And so I kind of outgrew her, and
hmm
I ended up with another voice teacher who was at the end of his opera career, but he was known for operettas and very theatrical performances. And I studied with him all the way through college, because I was out on Long Island, so I could come in and see him once a week. And then I switched to a teacher who I had for many, many years, and she kept saying to me, "Are you ever going to do anything with this?" And I would say no, until I finally said, "I think I want to do something with this." And she just put her head down on the piano. She had like hung in there with me until she got to see me get up on a stage, and that's when I did the cabaret. And I went into a recording studio and I brought her some demos, and we sat on her couch, and she looked at me and she said, "How many takes?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "How many takes did you do?" And I said, "Two or three for each song." She said, "Are these a combination?" I said, "No, this is just a single take." And she was like looking at me like, "Oh my goodness." And she said, the microphone really loves you. You love the microphone, and the microphone loves you. You are a recording singer." And she's right. She was right. And so she got to see me do my first show, the first awards that I won. I think she was there for the second album, and then she suddenly died, and that was very, very difficult for me, as you, I'm sure you know, and anybody who's a musician who is listening in, these are as much, your relationship with your music teachers are as much chemistry as they are, does this person know the things that you need to learn?
mm,
And chemistry doesn't mean that they're going easy on you, but that they get you, and they get how you, like, she knew how I learned. She had figured that out. She said, "I have some students who I tell them something, they can't get it, and then wham, they're up here and they've suddenly," she said, "That's not you. You do this, You go away, you're very disciplined, you do it, and it goes like this, and then it goes like this, and then it goes like this, and then you're where you need to be. And so she calibrated the way she taught me based on her decoding how I learned and how I would hear what she said. So it was really a catastrophe for me to lose that relationship. And it was, I kept thinking of the lyrics from Sometime Into the Woods where he said, sometimes people leave you halfway through the woods. And I went, what do you mean? In the middle of this thing, I'm finally out on a stage and you're not standing in the wings anymore with me. And so I did go through several voice teachers. I studied for several years with Celine Dion's voice teacher, who's a brilliant man. He built her voice when she was a kid in Montreal. And so I felt sorry for him because I was just trying to hook the voice teacher I knew to him, but he taught me tremendous things. And because he worked with world-class singers, he treated me like you should know these things so you can be a world-class singer. And I'm not sure that's what I'll ever be, but to be in that mindset with him was just great. And then he moved out of the city and I didn't want to do things remotely. And I have another voice teacher who very much reminds me of the voice teacher I had for so many years. That voice teacher had a little thing that she would say, where she would say, occasionally you need to click, which really was about releasing and relaxing your jaw by letting go and just literally click your teeth together. And when this voice teacher that I have now said to me, you need to click, and I just looked up at the ceiling and went, I have received your signal. Thank you. I have found my next voice teacher. And we're having a wonderful time. And she pushes me too, which is, you want people that you trust enough that you'll let them push you. And she'll say, I'm not trying to be, I'm sorry that I have to say this to you. And then she'll go, nah, I'm not really sorry I have to say this to you. I have to say this to you. And to get to that point where it can be done with humor and where she's doing it because it's the right thing, because she thinks I can do it. Sort of like the musicians in the studio. If they think I can do it, then I guess I better figure out how to do it. Is really great. But teachers are everything, really everything.
I'm just curious because I don't spend a lot of time with vocal lessons. I've thought about it. There's so many. I'd love to take so many different lessons. I'm just so curious, and I don't have time for it. But that is one thing I would love to do, is do vocal lessons at some point. What are some examples of things that feel like pushing, like you're talking about? Is it going in a certain range? Is it taking on a certain character to your voice? Like doing a certain piece? What are examples of things that feel like you're pushing your edge there?
My voice teacher now, I think it partly has to do with the age that I'm at now. She felt that I was unnecessarily heavy on the bottom, so that I would hit the bottom really hard and then go up. And so we worked on that over time. She got like that other voice teacher that I had to be told things multiple times. Telling it once didn't work, and that sometimes you have to say it to me in another way. There's something about placement where she believes the sound should be. So we've been working on things about placing the voice almost like you're going through a straw. Things about relaxation. As my voice has gotten, I think, heavier, a little bit darker. Things about what you're doing with your jaw. Every singer is in battle with their jaw and the tension in their jaw. She gives me an enormous amount of vocal exercises, which is absolutely fine with me. I never had a voice teacher who gives me so many vocal exercises, which is great. And so I had things that I was preparing for these EPs that I did last year, and they each had some little problem for me, something that I hadn't done or hadn't done well before. And she would give me a series of vocal exercises to take away and work on.
Mm.
So
Interesting.
there's that. Yeah, it really depends on what we're working on and what we're trying to balance out. She pushes me on pitch. I don't think it's an issue anymore, but I think when I was in between teachers, bad things happen when you're in between teachers and nobody's paying attention, or you've only been on Zoom during a
Hmm.
pandemic. And so
Hmm.
she was all over pitch there for a while. And I couldn't hear it. I just couldn't hear that I was slightly under occasionally. And she would just poke and poke and poke. And as she said, I don't hear it anymore, so you've solved it.
Right.
Um, but you can drift if somebody isn't watching you.
Yeah. I think I get the general theme is you basically develop habits and they
Yeah.
feel good. They feel right because you've been
Yes.
doing it that way, whether it's the pitch is off a little bit, but you feels great, or the sound quality could be better from if you hear it from the outside. So if you just did this, but internally your body's going, I'm making the best sound
No,
quality
the
I can,
reverb
right?
in your head is just fine. And I'll say, but that sounds like a really light sound to me. And
Hmm.
I'll pick up my phone and we'll record it. And then she'll
Hmm.
go, now listen to it. And I'll go, oh,
Got
oh.
it.
That's not what I'm hearing in my head. She said, I know, I'm out here. I'm telling you what
Hmm.
it sounds like out here. And when I'm sitting, it's in a complex of studios, and I can hear all the students are working on basically the same thing with
Mm.
whatever teacher is the right chemistry for them.
There's an analogy there with the concert piano actually, because when you're tuning a piano for the concert stage,
Mm,
like a Carnegie Hall or
yeah,
something like that, to the and also just even performing, you're playing an electric instrument, you got your amps up on stage or whatever. The sound of that piano in the concert hall, when you're sitting in front of it and you're the player, you go, whoo, this is really bright. Oh my gosh, we need
yeah,
to, we
yeah,
need to tone this down a little bit. Oh my gosh, it's so intense, right? But if you go out in the hall, you go, oh wow, it needs to cut through, right? So you can sit in front of one of these pianos that's sounding good in a hall, and you can be like, oh, I don't know if I like the sound of this, right? But you're right there. You're not the listener, you're the
right.
player. So you kind of have to get used. I think as all musicians that perform, and even like this, what we're doing, if you're like a podcaster and you're talking, you have to get used to the difference between your self-perception locally and what people externally are witnessing. And you kind of have to adapt and get the thing that feels weird locally to feel right, just kind of intuitively knowing that it comes across better externally. And
I
that's
love
just a
that.
human thing. Yeah.
That's fascinating to me. That really is. And I have the person who's been the co-producer and usually the engineer on all my recordings. We've been working together for like 10 years. It's the same concept. Obviously, an engineer, he's a sound designer. He lives in the world of sound, but he knows me too. And I think the other common denominator in what we're talking about is trust, that so they know me, they know my sound, and they know how I think, and they know how I process, and I know them, and I know that their only goal is to make me sound like me on my best day. And he will occasionally in the recording studio, I'll start a take and he'll go, I'm going to stop you right there. Because when you hear the playback, you're going to tell me to erase it. So let's just stop it right there. And I'll go, okay. And I instantly trust him and he'll tell me what it is. It could be it's too small, or it's not centered in some way, or it sounds like you're still warming up or whatever, or let's switch to something else and come back to it. But it's a trust on both sides. And when those teachers and that engineer tell me something, because I trust them and I respect them, I believe that they are trying to help me. And I also receive it as they think I can do it. They think
Mm,
I can do it better. That's a
mm,
compliment. I don't want you to filter that out. I want you to tell me that I can do it better and then give me a safe place to figure out how to do it better. And that to me is as fun as anything else, is solving those problems and
mm,
finding those things, or a note comes flying out that wasn't releasing in some way. Oh my God. And I slight tangent. I've started taking Tai Chi, and the Tai Chi teacher actually has a baby grand in his living room, and he plays classical music every day. And so after about a month or so, I would come for a private class, and I came back, and he said, I love teaching musicians. And I said, why? He said, because musicians like to practice. They
mm,
go away, I teach them something, and they go away and they practice it.
mm,
Other people go, all right, you told me, I'll come back next week and you'll tell me what the next move in the sequence. He said,
mm,
musicians go away and practice, and they think it's the most fun thing to do in their
mm,
day. And I went, oh my God, that's right. I love to practice. I
mm.
love it.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's like they call yoga a practice, right? Or things like
Yes.
that. And you're right,
Yes.
the general person doesn't necessarily get that concept of just, hey, let's just do this every day a little
Yeah.
bit and refine it. It's like, oh, I got it. Okay, I'm good. I figured it out.
And sometimes some days your brain wanders, and some days you sort of like tilt over. It's like, what is that? I was totally fine. Or your brain freezes and you just cannot remember what the next thing is. And then the next morning you wake up and it just flows because you had to go through those other things.
Mm,
I have this image of an old-fashioned movie projector where you're threading in the movie the celluloid, and then it will show on the that's the way I think about practice. I'm
mm,
trying to load it in, make sure it goes into the sprockets line up, and
mm,
eventually it's going to play smoothly, but it's not going to go right away. And
mm,
that's part of the fun of it, is to figure it out. It's a
mm,
little mystery. And then what is the song about? And what is my version of the song that nobody else would sing? No one else would sing that song that you showed the way I do. It doesn't mean that it's better or worse. It's just, it's my version.
mm. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And with the practice, you're laying down the neural pathways and you got
Exactly.
sleep in between,
It's the sleep and
trials, and that
the
helps.
sleep and the water. It's sleep, water, sleep, water, and walking. When I'm learning lyrics, and maybe neurologically, I have to walk to learn lyrics. So
Hmm.
lots of people have said they see me on the street and that I'm talking to myself, and I'll go, I'm not talking to myself. I'm learning lyrics.
Yeah, I've been doing that recently. I was trying
Yeah,
to
there's
learn a song. I
something
was
about your body moving.
Mhm.
I've read a little bit about that.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the motor system and the sort of our musical brains are deeply connected. You've got the cerebellum is a part of your brain that's kind of responsible for some of those basic instinctual movement patterns, walking and things like that. And they also get activated when we're experiencing music, especially the rhythmic aspects of it. And that's kind of what's going on, like with dancing, right? It's like, okay, so
Yeah.
you hear something and then there's a beat and then you entrain to it and then your body starts moving, right? It's activating sort of in a reverse fashion. It's coming top down and it's saying, "Oh, we're going to grab this system that generates walking movements, and get it activated from a top down
Yeah.
direction." So, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
the
sort of
voice
kind of.
teacher that I had for many years also, we did a lot of classical music, and there was invariably something in every piece that snagged me that I would just have a hard time with. And occasionally, at some point, she would take the music off of the piano, close it, hand it to me, and say, put this in the oven and let it bake. Meaning, stop grinding at it, let your
Mm,
brain do its thing,
mm.
put it away, we'll work on something else, and then we'll open it back up. And it never failed that when we opened it back up a couple months later, I would go sailing through it. Um, to your point, there are all these things that are going on behind the scenes that we don't necessarily fully realize or even sense consciously, but it's in there, working on something.
We have just a handful of minutes left of the program. I do want to wrap it about the hour. Maybe if I
Mm.
go 5 minutes later. There's sort of one thing that I kind of a question that I did want to address just because out of curiosity. So you've kind of launched into having a career in music. It's been about a decade or so. Am I right
Yeah,
in that?
yeah,
Um, Tell me the trajectory here of that and your sort of like parallel life, right? You're a professional, right? You said
yeah,
you're working in maybe corporate environments. How have those two things, since the sort of emergence that you have both,
yeah.
does one get stronger or weaker? Do they interleave
No,
somehow? Do
they
you?
absolutely do. One was a vocation and one was the avocation, and now they flipped, because I don't work full time. I can just work when I want to. But
Hmm.
I have a lot of skills that somebody else might not have in terms of just knowing how to organize myself, knowing how to do staffing, in other words, finding the collaborators,
Hmm.
marketing, because I spent my whole career in communications companies. I know I may not always know how to optimize the technology, but I get the basic concepts of how you present yourself and that you do
Mm.
it with a certain amount of discipline. Um, but I still want to do the other thing because it's good for my brain. Besides,
Hmm.
it's also paying for the music, but
Pocketbook. Yeah.
um, it's just good to use different parts of your brain for different reasons. And I spent 30 really interesting years doing that. So I really I don't want to lose that part of my persona. Um, but it's not my be all and end all, which is a very healthy thing. And I also do various philanthropic things. And I've been tutoring elementary students on reading skills, which has been just the best thing. It turns out to be less about reading skills and more about just basic building confidence in somebody young who may learn in a different way or
Hmm.
may come out of a home setting that is not setting them up to do well academically. And once I realized it was about that and not about whether they did better on a reading test at the end of the year, I just kind of relaxed into it. And I catch them struggling with the same things that I struggle with. And I go, wow, look at that. We all do this. We get frustrated with ourselves and we talk ourselves into things and we talk ourselves out of things. And had one student who I just pushed him a little too hard. I didn't catch that I was doing it. And he said, "You're stressing me out." And I went, "Thank you for telling me. That's not what I meant to do. Let's take a break. Let's go walk up and down the hall." And I went to my tap class the next week and she pushed me too hard and I couldn't get it. And I came back the next week and I said to the student, and she pushed me too hard. And I said, "You're stressing me out." And I said, "You taught me that." And he said to me, "I did, didn't I?"
That's good. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, no, it's very humbling, and it just sort of brings you back down to who you were as a child.
Mhm. Yep. That's a tough dichotomy too. I mean, I certainly have to deal with that in all sorts of situations, and yeah, I recognize feeling that as well, right?
Yeah,
People have their limit. The way that I thought about it, I'm actually subtly nuancing my approach to this as time goes on because you can go wrong in both directions. You know, you can be too soft. You know, people can you can have those personalities where they keep saying, "Oh, you're pushing me too hard. You're pushing me too," and you're
yeah.
like, you know
Yeah, that
what? I
wasn't
think we were
what I
pushing
was
you the right
pushing
amount.
him too hard. He was
Yeah,
slightly, he had like a little hysterical bubble coming up.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then and then there's the other extreme, and striking that balance is definitely complicated. And I think the most salient thing that's coming to me about it right now is the issue is you never really know someone else's context and background, right? So the thing that comes out for me is I was teaching in over there at Hunter College. I was teaching a statistics class in undergrads, and I had this guy who was a teaching assistant for me, and you know, he just was doing a bad job at a certain point, and I took him aside and said, "Hey, we got to do better, like this and that." And then he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. You know, maybe something was late at some point. Hey, we got to talk about this." Yeah. Oh, my mom's in the hospital. You
Uh,
know. Oh my gosh, fine. But I didn't realize you should have just told me that, right? And then he goes, I said, "Oh, well, I said, you know, your family kind of helping out a little bit." So, "Oh, I don't have any other family. It's just me and my mom." "Oh, okay. Well, that's a whole different thing." And then we went and we talked for a little bit, and I found out that not only did he have that extreme of a situation, like lots of responsibilities, but besides just doing a presentation for a statistics class, and turns out he had been homeless for several years. And
I'm seeing this with some of these kids, the stories of what it takes for them to just walk through that door every morning, what the struggle is in the morning before they get there. Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
And you don't know, and they don't know that. And that was the thing that I realized about him that was I felt it was very important to realize is that he actually doesn't know that everybody else doesn't deal with the same level of complexity that he
Oh,
might deal with, right? So he doesn't know to actually come and say, "Hey,
I
I'm
need
having an
help.
issue here. It's going to be difficult for me to do this. Can we talk? Can we change the deadline? Can I get some help or something?" For in his mind, he's just saying, "Well, everybody else is keeping up, and I'm not, and I got reprimanded
So I
for it.
must be
I
failing.
just got to work harder."
Yeah.
Which sometimes works, but ultimately, certain people they don't realize to give themselves credit for how much extra work they're doing versus the average person or somebody that has a support
Yeah.
network, stuff like that.
And how far a little kindness can go too
Mhm.
for somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, well,
we apply our lens to everybody, the same
Mhm.
lens. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, this is a good place to wrap. We do have to wrap it. I typically give the guests a moment towards the end here, just if you want to plug anything or do some final words of wisdom, tell people to go do something. Here's your moment, and then we'll wrap up. And then after the program, we'll cut the Zoom call. If you want to just jump back on Zoom real quick, we'll have a quick
Oh, sure.
one-on-one
That would
just
be
to
great.
wrap up.
Okay. Um, well, as I've been mentioning, I had a series of EPs that dropped last year. They're called Four Seasons of Song,
Mhm.
spring, summer, autumn, and winter. They will be re-released in album form this fall, but they're currently on all the streaming platforms. And I also have song notes because I love the history of every song and credits on my website in a recording section. And my website is Celia, Celia Berk, Berk.com. And I hope that if you're interested, you'll go and find something that catches your ear and that you enjoy.
Find a favorite.
Find a favorite. Yes.
Wonderful. All
Thank you
right.
so
Well,
much. Yeah, I
yeah,
learned some
thanks.
interesting things. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Good. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you. I'll do our outro. We'll sign off, and like I said, I'll see you back here in a minute. We have reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Of course, thanks to Celia Berk, our live audience, anybody that's catching us right now live, for joining us today. As always, we are brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you joined us today by just signing up for this session individually, hey, make your life more convenient. Subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour, just $16 a month. You get the recording of today's session in a member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. Sign up at bit.ly/joinptrh, bit.ly/join PTRH. Don't forget about the podcast, the blog on Substack, the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and sign up for our email list at the website with just your name and email. And we will see you all again next week. That'll be Easter weekend. I'll keep you updated.